I got a text the other day from a viewer. Hey, have you ever done a risotto episode? And in my head, immediately, I just thought, well, I must have. The show's been on for 2+ years. I said, I'll get back to you. So I scrolled through every show from the very beginning, 00, Come On In My Kitchen. Couldn't find one. I mean, I didn't look extensively. I opened a few up. The problem is I come up with these stupid names for these episodes. So it's not like it would have said risotto. But anything that looked like it might have been, I opened. I couldn't find it. Of course, we've done risi e bisi, rice and peas. I might have had 2 of those episodes because I wait for that every spring. And as soon as the peas are ready, it's the first thing I do. So I know I've done that. But that's not quite a risotto. It's a little bit of a different thing. So maybe we did, maybe we didn't, but I'm going to do a risotto tonight for this viewer. And I want to dedicate this episode to the man, the myth, the advisor, Kid Rock, not Kid Rock, Kid Doc, and the legend himself, Joey Tunes, formerly known as Joey Turns. This goes out to y'all. Now, with risotto, the sky is the limit, right? Risotto is a method of cooking short grain Italian rice. What you put in it is up to you, right? Mushroom risotto, the classic Milanese with butter, Parmesan cheese, and saffron, which in my opinion is the only one to serve with an ossobuco. I've done asparagus risotto when the asparagus come in fresh, amazing, with lemon. Tomato risotto, it's up to you. But tonight I'm going to do a shrimp and scallop risotto because, as you know, I always have the shrimp in my freezer. I got some beautiful diver scallops today. We'll have a look at them momentarily. And most importantly, it's one of my favorite scenes from Big Night. I don't know if you've seen the Stanley Tucci movie Big Night. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. I'm not going to do it. I do it. But I'm not going to bore you guys with my cheesy impression. But the lady's smoking a cigarette at the table, and she's complaining about her risotto. I don't see anything that looks like a shrimp or scallop in here. So I'm going to put a link just to that scene in the description box. For the seafood risotto scene in Big Night, link in the description. And let's head in and make this shrimp and scallop risotto. Come on, let's do it. Come on, let's do it. The first thing I say, people tell me they're making a risotto. I'm making a risotto. They're all excited. It's a mantra. I always say the first thing immediately. Risotto is all about the stock. Okay, you hear me talk about stock a lot. But depending on which risotto you're making, might determine which stock you want to use. That's phenomenal. I put that on about maybe an hour and a half, I don't know, maybe 2 hours ago. And what it is normally with most risottos, I'd use a nice rich chicken stock. You know, mushroom. You could even use a beef bone stock. The Milanese is definitely chicken stock. Shrimp, scallops, a little more delicate. I have used a mixture of chicken and fish stock for seafood risottos. But what I'm doing tonight is, this is a veggie stock. It's got celery, carrot, onion, your basic mirepoix, right? That goes in almost any stock as far as I'm concerned. Onion, carrot, celery. I got a little parsley here. But what I added for a little extra umami is, if you remember a couple of episodes back, well, quite a few now, we did the maitake mushroom. And I took these big flat chunks at the bottom, sliced them up, and put them in the freezer. I couldn't think of a better use. Maitake mushroom. There's another one. I think I got 3 of them in here. 3 big solid chunks, okay? So vegetable stock. But what we're going to do, I did the shrimp. Remember, I always tell you, not going to just waste those shells and throw them in the garbage. We're going to utilize them, and we're going to toast those, a little extra virgin. And then we're going to add our stock to that, because obviously I don't need that whole pot of stock, right? So just a touch of extra virgin olive oil in our pan here. Once the oil's hot, I'm going to toast these shells. Just get them to change color, make them pink. These are washed, by the way, and somewhat dried. When I peel the shrimp, I put the shells in a bowl of cold water and I rinse them out, give them a little scrub. So now, to those shrimp shells, we're just going to add the amount of stock we want for our risotto. So this nice mellow vegetable flavor with the mushroom umami. It's quite delicious. I'm only doing, looks like a cup of rice. I'm using up what was left in my rice bag. We'll talk rice in a second. So I don't really, you know, when you look up your risotto recipes, everything's spelled out for you. I don't really work by amounts anymore. I've made risotto 40, 100,000 times in my life. I just kind of know how much. And by the way, you go in these books, magazines, TV shows, they'll say, you know, 2 cups of rice and 5 cups of stock. Oh, don't quote me on those amounts. I'm just saying, for example. And then you run out of stock before it's done. They're only approximations because each grain of rice is going to have its own absorption. Yeah, there's little shrimp shells in there, right? So we're customizing our stock specifically for the ingredient that we want to use in the risotto. That's very key. Go with a little bit more. Just so we don't run out, and then I want to show you what I'm going to do with the rest of the stock in the back. We depleted the water level pretty good, so let's add back. Yes, it's going to weaken it a little. It's got that great umami anyway, and while we're waiting for this to infuse the shrimp shells a little, what I picked up yesterday, I've talked about the chicken backs for chicken stock. They're inexpensive. They're from all the parts they make. I slid by this turkey back, and it was 89 cents a pound. This was about £1.25 pounds, so it cost me $1 and change, like $1.05 or whatever. I roasted it, not fully, not to where you could even eat it, but just a little bit of a roast, which is going to give a nice deep flavor to the stock. So now, put this other back burner on, slide this over, put a cover on it, and we got a nice rich stock for down the line. Turkey back stock. That's picking up some nice beauty from the shrimp shells. I'm going to slide it to the back burner, and let's get the front burner set up for some risotto. All right, shrimp and scallop risotto. So we got our shrimp, already cleaned them, deveined them, dried them. Here's those gorgeous diver scallops. Now, normally when I make this risotto, I would get the little bay scallops. They're much less expensive. These things are crazy. You get dry diver scallops. That's why I just got the 3. And actually, what I'm going to do here, these are going to get minced up. That's the whole thing with the big night, is that she can't see the seafood in the risotto. So I don't see anything that looks like a shrimp or a scallop. It's all going to get finely diced. And it goes through the rice kernels. It's absolutely delicious. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to save 1 shrimp, maybe a half a scallop as a garnish. And you'll see how we're going to do that. So there's our shrimp and scallops. White wine, onion, perfectly fine to use shallot. I had a shallot, but I used it a couple of days ago, so I'm using one of my yellow onions. A little parsley for the finish, butter for the finish, and this is one of the few times when you'll see me insisting on cheese with seafood. Parmigiano Reggiano, freshly grated. I just grated it. Butter and Parmigiano Reggiano the final finish for almost all my risottos. Not only the intense flavor, but the creaminess that you get from the butter and cheese, melted cheese mixture. That's how you finish it. Now, risotto. It's all about rice, right? Arborio is the general rice of choice, but I prefer Carnaroli. I use both, but I like Carnaroli. To me, I don't know, it seems a little creamier, a little more al dente. So like I said, I was going to do a close-up on the grains to try to show you the difference, but I haven't opened this one yet, and it's vacuum packed, so I don't want to take the grains out. This is my Carnaroli. I had just that much left. Remember I said it's about a cup by eyeball, so I'm just going to dump that in the pot. Let's get started. So we'll get this low flame back on under here. And you do want hot stock. So I've got the stock on the back. So now that it's infused the shrimp shells, I can turn it down a little. Yeah, that's so perfect. Extra virgin olive oil. We're going to start with our onion. Know how I talk about all the senses? Smell, but also the sound, right? That's the perfect sizzle. I am going to get a wooden paddle, and I like nice and flat with a square top so I can get all around the edges of this. Saute the onion. Some people put garlic. I don't tend to use garlic in my risottos. Once in a blue moon, depending on what type it is, I might put a clove in. All right, in with the rice, and this is key. We want to toast the rice, the outside of the rice, before we add any liquid. What's going to happen is it's going to form sort of a little barrier on the outside of the kernels. And then when we start adding liquid, the rice is going to absorb the liquid, but by toasting the outside, it gives a little shield to absorb at the right rate, I'll say. Very key. Risotto, for me anyway, all this is subjective. Don't take my word for any of it. But for me, it's about the flavor, of course, but also the texture, the al dente, and you're trying to control that as best you can with various, like toasting this rice at the outset. And if you look at it, you'll see it start to change, not so much color, but opacity, right? It's going to start getting a little sort of, not translucent. I don't know how to describe it. You just have to watch it. I'll say that's pretty nicely toasted. We're going to go in with some white wine. Before you stock, you start with your white wine. One of my favorite sounds in the whole universe. That's music. And it's immediately going to start. See how it starts to suck it up? Now, I should have strained the shrimp shells, but I think I can work around them. So it's already pretty dry. So I'm going to start with a ladle of stock. I'll go with two ladles because I want that to slowly absorb while I quickly chop up the shrimp and scallops. I forgot to do that. Now, you'll also hear all this lore, all these admonitions people do. Don't walk away, you have to stir. Don't stop stirring. That's nonsense. The main thing and the reason that people say that is you do not want to burn the rice, and you want to make sure you don't want to add liquid until it's absorbed what's already in there. But you also don't want it to dry up so much that it then burns. So you do want to keep an eye on it. I put 2 ladles. I stepped to the side and I chopped up all the seafood, and now I'm back. Now with like a long grain rice, if I'm making Chinese food, Mexican food, you put the water in, you cover it tight, and you let it turn the heat as low as you can, and that way the rice slowly absorbs the liquid. This is a different method, hence risotto. You let the rice gradually in stages, and what's happening is it's not only pulling in the liquid, it's going to begin releasing its own starch into the liquid, and that's how we get the creaminess of a risotto. I'm in a pretty high heat here. As long as you're watching, paying attention, taking care of it, the heat should be fine. And since I didn't pull the shells, etc., I grabbed this little strainer. Already I think I might need some more stock, but the beauty of it is we've got our stock pot right next to this pot. Now granted, I did add the turkey, but it's only been a few minutes. If anything, it'll make it better, right? So in we go, a little more stock so we don't run out before the rice is ready. If we don't use it all, we don't use it all. But I want enough in my pot back there. Now, after about 10 minutes, I don't know if we're there yet, but you do want to now start checking. It's going to be way too hard, but you want to start checking the al dente. Although, wow, I can tell it's going to be perfect. Still got too much bite, but we got plenty of stock to go. Alright, I'm going to turn this camera off. I'll tend to this. You know the idea. When it starts getting dry, more stock goes in. So I'll get it to just under al dente, and then I'll turn the camera back on and we'll continue. I'm back. I added some more ladles. Kept my rice happy, moving. It's starting to release its starch now. You can see how it's starting to like almost clump together, because the starch is coming out. That's how you get that creamy texture. But it is still a little tough on the inside. However, I wanted to come back now to say, if this were, let's say, a mushroom risotto, risotto al funghi, depending on what you were putting in here, even veggies, even like a zucchini or asparagus, you'd probably add it now. But of course, the fish is not going to take long to cook it all, and I don't want to overcook it, so we're going to wait a few minutes. But if you had an ingredient that was semi-solid, you'd probably add it now. But it is starting to soften up nicely. All right. The stock is getting low enough where the ladle is almost impractical, so we're going to do this. And just as with pasta, you've heard me say, I tend to go a little heavy on the al dente. So different people are going to have different preference. You try to make it palatable, you know, to the majority. I like tooth in my rice and in my pasta. Starting to get that creamy element. I think I'm about ready to add the fish. Let's add a touch more stock as soon as this absorbs a little more. And then when we add the next bit of stock, we'll put the fish in. I'm also going to get this little cast iron heated up on this right burner for our garnish. We'll have a look at that at the end. Oh, I love risotto so much. And by the way, remember we were talking about the butter and the Parmesan cheese? That is the magic elixir at the end that just glues everything together. All your flavors. I'm going to turn the back burner off because our stock's plenty hot. And if you also notice, it's beginning to absorb liquid at a much slower rate. That means it's pretty full. So let's just put a touch more liquid, and let's throw our fish in. Shrimp and scallops, right? I chopped them up, but I kept one of each for the garnish. So let's get in there with our fish. I don't see anything that looks like a shrimp or a scallop. Shrimp turning color already. Now there's an old Japanese thing that I read years ago, or maybe heard somewhere. And it had to do with the chef saying, see that grain of rice right there on the side of the pot? You don't want any grain of rice getting lonely. The wording of it was better than that, but it was very emotional towards the grains of rice. You don't want any grain of rice to have to be alone. They all want to be together. My cast iron's pretty hot down here, so I'll turn that off. Last little touch of stock. We're just about there with the absorption rate. And I'm going to check the al dente one more time right now. Perfect. Perfect. Oh, and the shrimp and scallops have already added their beautiful flavor of the sea. Now let me show you how we're going to finish this. We're done with the stock. I can get that off the stove. Look how creamy everything's looking. And we haven't even put our final elements in, which just ties everything together like you wouldn't believe. All right, we're going to finish it right now. Let's get our butter. With this amount of rice, I'll go with about a tablespoon. I didn't measure the cheese, I just grated it to eyeball measure. And this is critical. Okay, as soon as that butter and cheese goes in, turn off that heat. We're done. A little bit of salt. Notice I didn't season at all until now. Because again, salt is key with osmosis and capillary action. And any salt that you add is going to interfere with the transfer of liquid between the rice kernel. A little black pepper, so I salt at the end. Let's give it a taste now that we added salt. Oh yeah. All right. For all practical purposes, this is done. But this is another critical step. You want to cover it. Well, what did I say about the rice kernels, remember? Get them all together. And just like how you want to let your ribeye steak rest, let that risotto rest. It's got the butter and cheese in it now. And I got this screaming hot cast iron. So let's do our garni. No oil, dry pan, right? A little kosher salt. Semplice, simple as can be. Shrimp. Scallop. Well, let's give the shrimp a little bit of a head start. All right, let's go down with the scallop now. Dry pan, right? Got that stock going in the back with the turkey in there. That's going to be phenomenal. I think I'll make a lentil soup with that this coming week. Beautiful. Okay, while those finish, we can plate up. Let's get in a little closer on that. There we go. Pot's on the back burner. Let me ladle out some risotto. You see how it's sort of holding together? That's that starch. Almost acting as a glue. Look at that. Beautiful. Little chunks of scallop. Let's do a little garnish with this before we chow down. I've got my parsley. Getting a little chop. Let's do a little lemon wedge here. Let's put a little lemon wedge there. I kept one parsley sprig. Give it one of those. They're not the freshest, but it's what I have. All the herbs are getting seeded now. Let's go, just for the look of it, a little black pepper. And now we've got our shrimp and scallop, right? So how do we want to do this? Got that nice pink color. Let's go like so. Oops. Kind of works, right? And this nice, beautifully seared, pan-seared scallop we'll put right here. I am ready to give this a go. Let's do it. Come on, let's do it. Who's pumped here, y'all? Shrimp and scallop risotto. You can't describe this. You just have to eat it. Garnishes were kind of an afterthought. I'm glad I afterthought of it. Dry diver scallops, man. Salt, dry cast iron pan. Don't mess with them. This is phenomenal. Man Myth Advisor, Kid Rock, keep doing that. Kid Doc, Joey Tunes. We'll see you all for the next episode. Come on, let's do it.